took 8 years, a reading of the original novel, and 100 hours of The Witcher 3 for me to realise I was playing the first Witcher wrong. The series, I thought, has a lot in common with posh wine. People harp on about its maturity and freshness because no one wants to be first to admit that it's really just grape juice gone wrong. Oh yes, I like the bouquet on this one. Elderflower and summer breeze. Yes, tasting notes of cardamom and jelly babies. This one has mature themes which challenge the moral duality so common in RPGs. This was my experience of hype for The Witcher 3. I saw the trailer where the raven exploded out of the man's skull, and that was pretty cool. I saw the E3 gameplay reveal, which is now supposedly evidence of false advertising, and it did indeed look lovely. But having always felt that the praise lavished on Witchers 1 and 2 was roundly bollocks, I wasn't exactly queuing at the midnight launch. Review code turned up late and was forgotten in a flurry of house moving and job quitting, and how sorry I am that I only got to it recently and missed that review train, because I am now quaffing posh wine with the best of them, toasting a sensitive adult drama in a fantasy world of disgusting scale, and the tech CD Projekt developed to pin it together. Oh, this vintage is particularly good. The Witcher 3 is an achievement of the likes of early 3D. Given current consumer hardware and the time they had available, I can't fathom how CDPR pulled it off without resorting to black magic. But more interesting to me than the dark rituals in which they allegedly participate is that The Witcher 3's finesse has finally helped me understand what The Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 were meant to be and why I struggled with them. It's not so much The Witcher 3 as The Witcher. We did it right this time. I still think the first two are bollocks and I wouldn't replay them for all the alternate endings in the world, but the series is a fascinating time-lapse of a new developer learning their craft, developing their tools and perfecting their blood sacrifices until they got it just right. This video is a look back at what didn't work then and why it does work now, and how a series that was once held together by patches has offered up one of gaming's greatest RPGs. At the last grand circle jerk of Witcher 3 fans, we all got together and decided that yes, the Bloody Baron is the best questline in 200 hours of exceptional questlines. Your invitation is probably still in the post. A contract to find a Baron's missing family spirals grimly out of hand. It becomes a tale of alcoholism and domestic violence, of miscarriage, of nauseating rituals surrounding said miscarriage, of orphans being eaten, of helplessness in the face of tragedy, oh, and of big hairy monsters. But big hairy monsters, unusually for a game about big hairy monster killing, are the backdrop. The Bloody Baron is a human drama, like EastEnders, but with animate fetuses instead of miserable Londoners. To do human drama without abstracting in the vein of Telltale requires several things to go right. The script, the delivery, and the animation. If the writing's off, the stench won't be hidden by an open world. You begin to avoid human interaction, as I naively tried in The Witcher 1. And now the first script wasn't the worst, as suddenly the misery of Temeria came over, and whenever there's a wedding in any Witcher game, you can hear the distant cackles of George R.R. Martin. But we never did hear the full script. When The Witcher 1 went live, great hunks of dialogue had been removed from the original Polish. The leading theory is that this was a cost-saving exercise that cut too deep, causing conversations in a human drama to flow like porridge, aided not a bit by minimal animation that made even political intrigue look like Ken dolls barking.
A Witcher? How much would you ask for an opportunity to examine your body?
I don't think you could afford it.
Even now that the Enhanced Edition has restored most of the intended speech and character animation, imperfect editing makes it feel as if Geralt and his chums are communicating via vidlink from the 90s.
Geralt! Melatelli must have sent you. There's a woman outside. The dogs will tear her apart. Help her! Help! No!
Don't open the gate! The beasts will enter! These dogs are deadly.
People were broken, and therefore The Witcher 1 was broken. The Witcher 2 did human drama way better. They fixed the editing, and Doug Cockle's deadpan acting for Geralt had got just enough practice in the first game not to sound like a sideboard sprung to life. But the animation work, though greatly improved to be fair, was still far enough down the uncanny valley to make me beg for oblivion at the first sign of romance. The Bloody Baron has a plot that twists in ways typically reserved for novels. Its cast of British farmers has never been stronger, and this particular love story doesn't involve putting your dick in things. But make no mistake, the humanity in The Witcher 3 is a technological victory. Advancement in facial capture has meant that for the first time the script can contain the unsaid. Lies, mistrust, affection and ulterior motives can be read in the tics that CD Projekt took care to include.
You should have dressed warmer.
Next you'll be pinning mittens to my coat.
In the first Witcher, I skipped everything because I couldn't stand hearing its fragmented chit-chat, so I missed the point of the game. Geralt is a Witcher swept up in politics and people as much as monster killing. 8 years later, The Witcher's people are worth hearing out.
Talk, but you come. Or call you wham-a-wham like this.
Exactly.
At the time, I skipped the human interaction and got on with killing things. But murder had problems too. Geralt was the floatiest superhuman monster slayer in all the land, and getting drunk, a necessary part of several quests, gave you the kind of control you'd expect of a Malaysian airliner. Boss fights were notoriously bad, the series' first being its hardest and dumping you back behind a cutscene with every failed attempt. And don't mention the Koshchei. In general, the combat has been tolerable, despite the fact that CDPR are still trying to nail that difficulty curve. The Witcher 2 revamped the single-click slashing of the first, and bombs and gadgets were subtly redesigned to encourage using them. But it still suffered for unwieldy steering and sluggish input. Dodge rolls take days, and one mad dash to grab a sword before combat triggered and made it impossible had me gibbering with rage. The Witcher 3, in my opinion, doesn't perfect movement. Geralt turns like he's in platform shoes. But there's no hint of input delay, which convinces me that it was at least a stylistic decision intended to bring weight and realism to traversal. In this instance, realism might have been more trouble than it was worth. The mocap sword swings are so heavily choreographed that CDPR couldn't let us cancel them mid-swing without it looking like a seizure. We are locked into combat animations, which, while more authentic than ever, leaves the best combat of the series more clumsy than it might have been. Still, I can understand why it was done, where once it was hard to tell creativity from cock-up. For those of you absolutely gripped by my lilting tones, I do apologise. This wasn't originally intended to be a two-parter, but I got started writing and now there are 5 pages of narration on the table in front of me. So help me God, part 2 will appear same time next week. In the meantime, I would like to say thank you very, very much to everyone who's stuck with Reroll for the past couple of months when absolutely nothing has been happening. I am now nicely settled into Reroll's new headquarters. I am writing and videoing about games full-time, which means, well, more videos. Hooray! I'm hoping to have a review ready on Thursday, but if you just can't wait until then, or if you're worried something might happen in the intervening time, you can keep up with all the Reroll news on @RerollGaming on Twitter or reroll.angusgmorrison on Facebook. I will see you very soon.